Great. And I would begin with asking that any persons who are not members of the commission, if you could turn off your video and mute yourself for now. Just the way Zoom works, it prioritizes folks with a video on. And so that will allow us to make sure we can see the commissioners while we're in discussions. And then I want to begin with our acknowledgement as soon as I find it. Sorry.
Kevin, I can read it if you want.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Please.
Let us acknowledge we reside on the ancestral lands and waters of the Coast Salish people who have called this place home since time immemorial. And let us honor inherent Aboriginal and treaty rights that have been passed down from generation to generation.
Thank you very much. Can we do a roll call, Catherine?
Certainly. Sharon.
Here!
With such gusto. Dave Anderson.
Here.
Bill.
Here.
Janet.
Here.
Kyle. Not seeing Kyle. David Delandorf. I see him waving. Paul Dossett.
Here.
Jane.
Here.
Patty.
Here.
Tony.
Present.
Richard.
Here.
Liz.
Here.
Bob.
Here.
Kevin.
Here.
Olivia. Maureen.
Here.
Anne Marie.
Here.
And Tom.
Here.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Okay, so we will go into the next item, which is approval of the June 23rd minutes. Before we ask for a motion to accept those minutes, I would ask if there are any changes or edits that anybody has. Okay, if not, I would accept a motion to approve the June 23rd minutes.
Motion to approve.
And do I have a second? And Patty seconds. Okay, motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, great. Minutes are adopted. Okay, we're going to move into what I hope will be a quick review of updates that we have from the different amendments that are moving forward. And then we will have but that will begin with justice and equity, where we will actually spend a bit more time because a new document was sent out to everybody. And we're going to ask one of the co-chairs of that committee to review that for us. And then we are looking for action on that item today. Recognizing, Tony, I'll get to you in 1 second if I could just finish this summary. Recognizing that all the language will be coming back to us in a final document. And then at the end of the meeting under new business, oh, let me say something else on this piece. And climate and environment, we have a fairly substantial update, but we are not looking for action today. There's still work being done, but that will be coming back. And then at the end of the meeting under new business, I will be bringing up a few different points. One is the date of the meeting next week, or the day of the meeting next week. The second is I'm hoping we will have time to discuss the 2 versus 1 ballot issue. And then the third is an update for you on what I'm hoping will be our presentation to the county council. So we're getting close to concluding our work. And with that, let's, Tony, go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I respectfully ask again that we will talk about a minority report under new business, and item 1 and number 2 to review the county council's decision yesterday to create a department.
Yeah, that'll be part of the climate and environment discussion. And as far as a minority report, I would like to, if we have time today, Tony, I'm already really worried about our agenda. So that can be an important conversation, but let's try and get to it today. And if we can't, we'll get it on the agenda formally for Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. So
for the record, this is the 3rd time I've asked. Thank you.
So thank you, Tony. I will say that, a minority report is welcome. Anybody who has a minority opinion can write a minority report. What I'm trying to do is get us through our amendments. So I'm glad that you're already feeling that you need to write a minority report or somebody else does, but we haven't finished our amendments. So for me, I feel like things are timely and critical, and some things are timely and critical. What is timely and critical is that we finish our work, and then we can evaluate it and decide whether or not we support that or not. But for me, prioritizing the discussion of a minority report when we haven't even finished our initial work to decide whether or not we support it or not is a bit premature.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't implying anything. All I was trying to say is that we would like to discuss not the content of the report, but the idea that there might be potentially a report that this committee, this Charter Review Commissioners.
Fully appreciate that, Commissioner Gazelle. What I'm saying is let's prioritize finishing our work, okay? And so and I've said I'll try and get to it under new business. I've already got 3 items under new business, potentially 4.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay. So with that, let's go into justice and equity and get a report from Commissioner Fuller on the work that's being done there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So my co-chair, Kyle Davies, is not here at this time, but I think he's fine with my going ahead and speaking to the revisions to 2 of the 3 amendments that we received feedback on from the prosecuting attorney's office back on June 14th, and which we have Kyle's just joined us, which we have considered and discussed and made some adjustments to the 2 outstanding amendments based on that feedback, and also based on feedback from a couple of commissioners who have commented on what I sent around day before yesterday, which was the text that I had drafted based on conversations with other subcommittee members and 1 or 2, I think it was actually 1 other commissioner. So we weren't discussing it more than the number of people having conversations were allowed to. So anyway, we met as a subcommittee, a special meeting this morning at 10 o'clock to look at those 2 sort of revised versions that I shared with all of you day before yesterday. And our subcommittee made some final adjustments to these 2 amendments that are before you, and felt ready to share them with you today and to talk you through some adjustments we made, and share with you the feedback we got from, it was specifically from Commissioner Apple and Commissioner Delandorf. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to screen share of the document. I sent you this earlier today, what came out of the result of our deliberations in our meeting this morning. And so I will just walk you through these 2 revised amendments. So with that, I'm going to screen share, and I'll just talk you through these, and then I will stop and we can have discussion. So bear with me for a moment. Here it is. All right. So I'm assuming you can all see this. Okay. So this document is what was sent around to you all a few hours back following our meeting this morning. And so with regard to the new section being proposed on non-discrimination, we received some comments from Commissioner Delandorf, which were helpful and valuable, and we took those under consideration. And we just made, we talked about what he was suggesting, and so we made some adjustments to this text that you'll see in green. And I should step back before I touch on Commissioner Delandorf's comments and just say what we did in response to the prosecuting attorney's memo to us and suggested changes was we removed the introductory paragraph that we had drafted to put at the front of this new section. And so it was his suggestion that we take that out. So we did. And you will also recall, perhaps from some time ago, we removed at his recommendation the reference to affirmative action. So Those are the changes that we made in response to some of the comments and advice we received from his office. And that, by the way, was sent around to all of us on the 14th of June. So you all received what the prosecuting attorney gave us in the way of feedback. Okay, so going to Commissioner Delandorf's comments, what he suggested we do was include a little bit more language regarding sort of what may or may not happen to an employee that could be discriminatory in terms of they're not being promoted or advanced or terminated on appropriate grounds. And so we added or termination here in green. We felt that promotion and advancement considerations were covered under conditions of employment. So we addressed that. We addressed that termination factor. Commissioner Delandorf also suggested we put a comma in after on the third line, or in the treatment of residents and citizens, visitors, comma, to ensure that all the aforementioned parties are included in the remainder of that sentence that follows on in the provision of government services, etc. So we took those two on board. The other suggestion Commissioner Delandorf made was to include individuals who may have been convicted of a crime or accused of a crime or having served time in prison, that they also not be subjected to discriminatory practices or conduct. And so we included status as an accused or convicted criminal in that language as well. So those are the changes we made to take into consideration Commissioner Delandorf's comments we received yesterday. So those are the extent of the changes we made to those sections, or that section rather. Otherwise, they are quite similar to what you saw back on, I think it was May 26th when we presented them to you. So that's amendment number 1. Amendment number 2 is this new section on the establishment of a Justice, Equity, and Inclusion Commission. We took into consideration, again, the comments made by the prosecuting attorney. We acknowledged some of them, took some of them on board, and some we did not. And so what you have here is the language that we landed on. We felt it would be important to make quite explicit reference to this San Juan County Council Resolution number 31, and therefore, added that language in there that it talks about recommending actions to advance the core values as written in that resolution, because really the creation of the commission is all about supporting the county government to apply that resolution in all of its functions. And so you've had this language to review for a couple days now, so I'm hoping that you all took a look at it, but we tried to lay out more clearly what the mandate of this commission would be, how it would be, who would be the members of it, and then sort of some information about its functioning. So what would accompany this is a recommendation to the county council with regard to the establishment of the commission, and laying that. But what we tried to do here was put in more detail. And so Commissioner Apple came in with some comments last night, which were helpful because he brought his legal lens to this proposed amendment, and he felt the need for a little bit of clarity when we're talking about all branches of county government, and also he asked, is this commission going to be, or put to us the idea that this commission could possibly sort of be overlapping on the mandate and functioning of the prosecuting attorney as the as the county's lawyer, and also possibly interfering with the work of the judges in terms of the decisions that they make in courts, etc. that's not the intent of this commission at all. And in fact, we were very fortunate very early on in our work as a subcommittee back in March, when we had a meeting with Justice Katie Loring, as well as Linnea Anderson, who works in her office, during which they made a presentation to us about their work, how it intersects with issues of justice and equity and inclusion in our county. And Justice Loring was actually very clearly supportive of the establishment of this commission. So too was Linnea Anderson, who has followed literally every single one of our meetings since we started meeting as a subcommittee, save one or two. She's been present throughout. She's given us useful information and advice and commentary on our work. So that office very much supported the establishment of this commission. And the only qualification Justice Katie Loring made was that this commission could not be reviewing my decisions and trying to adjust them in any way. And we acknowledge, no, absolutely not. So the intent of this commission is not to do that kind of thing. It is not to interfere with the mandates of either the prosecuting attorney and nor the work of the judges of either court, superior district in the county. So we may need to just tweak the wording such that that is clear, because we don't want that to be misconstrued in any way. And so what our subcommittee is bringing to you today is language that is very nearly final for this commission, but indeed we acknowledge what Bill Apple raised to our attention and want to ensure that there is clarity in this regard. So as Kevin said, we will all have, Commissioner Ranker clarified, we will all have the opportunity to read one more final time the language of all of these amendments. And so what we're putting to you today is a request that we put a motion on the table to accept these two amendments as they are, with the acknowledgement that this one, the one on the establishment of this Justice, Equity, Inclusion Commission, does need to be wordsmithed slightly to ensure that there's clarity in the role and functioning of the commission, not overlapping with certain legal mandates and judicial mandates in our county of those officials. So I will pause there. I'll stop sharing, and our subcommittee members are happy to entertain any questions. And I see Commissioner Delandorf has his hand up. So Commissioner Ranker, are you good with it?
Yeah, I'll take it. Hang on one sec. Okay, let's go to David.
Yeah.
Please.
By the way, yeah, you mentioned 2 amendments. I see 3 amendments here. You've done that. Okay, but here's my point. I recommended 3 things, and I appreciate you guys considering it and making basically the changes I requested. But I have to point out 3 things. One, where it says or termination, I suggested or discipline or termination. We don't want them disciplining somebody because of a bias for all the reasons cited. So I had suggested or discipline or termination.
Right.
Maybe that's under conditions of employment. I don't know, but
Yeah.
was that your decision?
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Commissioner
Okay.
Delandorf. That was the decision. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's
Go ahead.
That's fine. That's fine. And the comma, thank you for putting it in there, because that clarifies the meaning of that. With regard to status as an accused or convicted criminal, for starters, that phrase needs to be at the very end, because you cut off, with regard to veterans, the discussion of sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression, and it makes it doesn't flow and as intended. It should have been inserted at the very end as the last item.
Okay.
Not breaking up the discussion of the veteran and whether or not they're discharged for certain reason. Okay. And then the third and final thing is, pardon? I was just saying, please go ahead.
Okay, I had suggested wording the status as a convicted criminal who has served his or her time or sentence as mandated by the court. I hadn't considered a person being accused who's applying for a job. But I can see that that's appropriate because somebody's accused has not been convicted. They may very well be acquitted. So I'm okay with that. But if it's a convicted person, I think that person has to be convicted and have served his sentence, because we don't want somebody convicted who's sitting in jail, who has not paid compensation, has not served his time. Under this wording, you cannot disqualify a person who's sitting in jail convicted. And I think it needs to be clarified that as somebody who's been convicted and served their appropriate or met the sentence of the court, fulfilled the sentence of the court. So that's my suggestion to add on. Convicted criminal, is it criminal? I don't know if a felon is or a misdemeanor is a criminal or not.
Yes,
But anyway,
Commissioner Fuller, I was the one who looked into that when we were during the discussion. Do you mind if I respond to that?
No, I don't mind.
So Commissioner Delandorf, we looked into several different states acting upon this, and there's a lot of language with regard to voting rights. Keep in mind, we're talking about civil rights. We're talking about the basic rights of a human being to not be discriminated against. So frankly, even if you were sitting in prison in the middle of a sentence, you still should not be discriminated against. And so what we looked at was several different state models of language and found that the language we settled on was kind of a combination of several different states examples of how to address this. But the language you had suggested was more commonly used when you're talking about voting rights and other rights, but not basic civil rights and the ability to not be discriminated, or the right to not be discriminated against based on your race, your sexual orientation, or others.
can I respond? And then I won't say anything more, I promise. This is going to be presented to the public, and the public's going to read this and they're going to say, wait a minute, the county cannot discriminate against somebody who's sitting in jail. That's going to be their impression. That's maybe the law says that that's okay, but that's going to be what people are going to read when they see this. And I think that's,
If you go up to the opening paragraph of the document that talks about what we're protecting, I would say, yes, we are not allowed to discriminate against somebody in jail based on their sexual orientation, their race, or their, whether they're a woman or a man, or, those things, those are protected under the law regardless. So Bob.
Okay, for me, I mean, I've served both I was a criminal defense lawyer for a bunch of years, and I also worked within the personnel system of the state of Tennessee for many years. And I'm telling you, the idea that you cannot discriminate against somebody who is a convicted criminal in, say, hiring them, or let's say a person is under indictment for and has not yet been convicted, but is under indictment for embezzlement, and the treasurer wants to hire him, or doesn't want to hire him because he's. I mean, folks, this isn't going to fly. You've got to be able to discriminate against people who are convicted criminals, for instance. There are certain crimes that people can be convicted of. You don't want them in certain jobs, and you need to be able to say no, thank you, based on that conviction. Now, I know all about voting rights, and I'm very supportive of people having their voting rights restored once they're done with their sentence. And I think that's about as far as we have gone. I don't know of anywhere where the people doing the hiring and firing are told you can't take a look at the person's criminal record. People get sued because they didn't look at the criminal record. Okay, when somebody is hired and does the bad thing, don't do it.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Connell. Commissioner Ranger, I'd like to hear from.
Go ahead.
Tony had his hand up, and then
Yeah.
Bill Apple had his hand up.
I've got Tony and then Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Fuller. Are we just talking about the first item? Can I say something about the second item?
Perhaps we should just see if Commissioner Apple wanted to talk about the first item.
I'll wait. Thank you.
Okay.
And Jane, why don't I let you chair this segment of the meeting so that it's responsive to you and your document?
Okay, but I may still call on you or Commissioner Abreu or Commissioner Kyle Davies. Okay, go ahead, Bill.
I agree with Bob. There needs to be some wording dealing with job discrimination. It may be a civil right, but something needs to be done here. We don't want to cause confusion. Bob's example is perfect. And I've had the problem in my own office where somebody embezzles and then somebody writes in, obviously, this person had to leave. She did pay it all back, but you realize there's a quality in this person that doesn't make them suitable for handling cash. The next thing that happens is they want a recommendation. And it gets tricky to handle. The other person to have to explain this to is the county's insurers. The county isn't going to want to, the insurers aren't going to want to insure the county for hiring where this discrimination that Bob has said, and I think is absolutely necessary, is not accounted for. I realize this is more words, but there's got to be a way to say it, or this is going to be wildly misunderstood, not only by the voting people, but the insurance companies.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Apple. I wanted to clarify that we inserted this particular language in response to Commissioner Delendorf's suggestion. We did not refer this language to the prosecuting attorney's office. So I find it helpful and useful that the two legal minds on our commission are coming at us saying this is problematic. So I appreciate your perspective. I think clearly we need to address this, and you know, we may or may not be able to accommodate what Commissioner Delendorf is asking us to do in terms of it having this be included. So I would like to suggest that we confer with Commissioner O'Connell and Commissioner Delendorf on this and make a determination as to the appropriateness of including some language of this particular nature. Tony had wanted to go onto the second part. So did anyone else want to say anything further about the section on non-discrimination or okay, David's got, okay, go ahead, David.
I would prefer you consult with Randy before you consult with Bob and I, because ultimately Randy would decide on this. And one other thing, a convicted terrorist could run for office and not be disqualified the way it's worded. Bob agrees with me and Bill agrees with me. I think this would set up a convicted terrorist being qualified and not being able to be disqualified for running for office. And people lose their voting rights when they're convicted, as I will understand. Why not? If you lose your voting rights, shouldn't you lose your right to run for public office or work for a county government entity? Public companies can do whatever they want, but I don't. Insurance issues come into play, as Bill said. Okay, enough. I just think you ought to talk to Randy.
Commissioner Delendorf, that's fine. I just did want to make clear though that we were trying to work on this language based on a suggestion that you made to us.
Yeah.
So now you're turning around and having your mind kind of changed on this. So
no,
now,
it's not.
So I was
well, yeah. So anyways,
Not changed.
Okay, Mr. Chair, did you want to say something?
Yeah, if I can just comment on this section, based on the suggestions we have, I think I saw a lot of nodding. I mean, maybe we just delete that section that was added, trying to address the issue.
Please do.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, it was David's suggestion, and he's saying yes. So I guess you're pointing yourself, but that's okay.
No, but my reference was to a person who's been convicted and served their time. They should be qualified. But the discussion has gotten into people who have not been convicted or not served their time. So there's a difference. So
I would suggest that section that was added be deleted. And then we can move on to Tony's point on the next one.
I would second that suggestion.
Yeah. I'm okay with that, ultimately. Sorry to waste everybody's time.
Please, I want to vote for this. I want to vote for this.
Okay, so thank you. We'll proceed on that basis. Thank you, Commissioner Delendorf, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for helping us through that. That is what we will do then. We will strike that additional language that was inserted. Kyle has asked the screen be shared. Okay,
you need to have a vote. You need to have a vote on that.
Oh no, we're not finished yet, David.
Okay.
We still need to talk about number 2 and Okay, so it looks like Kyle wants the screen shared. Is that correct, Kyle? Okay, okay, all
You're
right.
going to anyway, right?
Yeah, we did share it previously and we took it down. Did you want to put back up again?
Well, if someone has a motion to move forward, we don't need it, but it sounded
Okay.
like we were going to look at it again.
No, second.
Okay, so we've got a motion, so I think we're moving forward.
Not make a motion. I said I would suggest
Yes, sorry.
that we not include that language, recognizing that there will be a motion at the end to adopt whatever we had agreed upon. But Tony has been waiting to jump in.
Yeah, and that, because he wants to talk about number 2. Tony, just before you start, I'm in on the second amendment. I wanted to clarify something that that Commissioner Delandorf raised at the beginning, and that is, yes, there are 3 proposed amendments. However, I clarified in our meeting last Wednesday, and I tried to clarify in the text that I sent to all of you that there was no recommended change to the land acknowledgement by the prosecuting attorney's office. He was fine with that. So in other words, that 3rd proposed amendment stands. And I did make that clarification last Wednesday when Commissioner O'Connell talked about the other parts from the process committee that would be going into the front end section of the charter. So just to clarify that, Commissioner Delandorf, that's why I wasn't talking about 3. Okay, so let's move on to Commissioner Gazelle's comments on the second proposed amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have to say I've actually agreed with Commissioner O'Connell on the first one, which doesn't happen very often. So we're starting on a good day.
Can I just interrupt to say we had a request to share the screen again?
Oh, sure. Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time. Thank you. Here we go. Let's share the screen again.
Yeah, I don't need, I mean, I'm fine with it. The question I have on number 2, Madam Chair, is, so we are in a small community and a small county, and if the county has to contract with somebody, sometimes they go out to bid. And one of the criteria for going out to bid is, certain conditions, obviously the bonding and so on, and low price bidding sometimes, not always the case. If an organization or a group of or a company doesn't have the exact wordings of this first item, does that disqualify them? I mean, suppose the county assessor wants to buy a new software program, and the company that is the winner doesn't have that language. Does that disqualify them for elected officials and for county department heads?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. I have to go off my screen share because I can't see people if it's on screen share. So I'll just, before I do that, I'll just say this is the clause that Commissioner Gazelle is referring to. The county shall not enter into any contract with any person, firm, organization, corporation, or other non-governmental entity that does not possess and adhere to anti-discrimination policies based on the grounds listed in clause 1. Okay, so I'm going to stop screen share now. All right, did somebody want to respond to Tony? Was it Mr. Chair?
I said yes, it would. That was the discussion at the subcommittee level, and that's the discussion with other governments who have put this sort of program forward. So I was just answering his question was, would it preclude a county official, any official, from contracting? And the answer is yes. But Bob has his hand up too.
Let me clarify. If even elected officials and they're separate.
This is a countywide thing that would be in the charter. So it's not just appointed. And the charter has the ability to do that.
Okay, excuse me. Let me kind of follow up on this. So does the wording have to be in a contract that suppose they say they check the box and say, yes, we adhere to these items, but they don't have it in their documentation anywhere. Does the county, is the county going to go and verify if those companies do have it in their documentation or in their, organizational charts or what have you? Or is it just acknowledge that and check the box?
Madam Chair, do you want me to try and respond to that?
Sure, and yes, go ahead.
Tony, I think that I don't think the county is going to become a police agent on making sure people are accurate. And frankly, they don't right now in other aspects of an application coming in. I think at some point you need to trust that an organization is telling you the truth in their application. And if they're not, you probably don't want to hire them in the first place. other governments that have similar proposals out or similar protocols out there, it is a box or something. And some say, please provide them. But this is all new too. This is coming around in the last couple of years since we're all waking up and realizing some of these issues must be addressed over the long term.
Okay.
What I'm trying to tell you, Tony, is what I've experienced and what I'm aware of. So in most cases, based on my experience with San Juan County, working with this government as well as other governments, it's mostly what you said in the previous, which is, you say you've got it.
Thank you.
Bob had his hand up, and then
Anne Marie had her hand up as well, and then David has his hand up. So Commissioner O'Connell, go ahead.
The first thing is, I was wondering what happened to the wording that the prosecuting attorney had suggested regarding best efforts. Remember the wording I'm talking about? Was that just was considered to be not adequate?
It was actually considered to be less strong than what just exists without even introducing this.
It certainly is less strong, but my observation about this is that I am delighted to support all of the things that are now, once you took the bad thing out of there, that I'm delighted to support all the things that are now in there. However, there's recognition, I would assume, that this goes way past what other folks have done. And well, it should, but it goes way past what other folks have done, which is okay when we're making demands of our own county government. But when we're making demands of people who we want to contract with, and we're demanding not only that they agree with the ideas, but they adhere with the policies and they possess policies which say the same thing. That sounds like bad news to me. Feels like bad news to me that we are requiring that, and that there ought to be some softening of that and looking at whether or not those people have any records of having any problems in these areas, that kind of thing. But I'm really disturbed by holding anybody we would contract to the idea that they have to have a manual that's got the same things in it.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner O'Connell. Anne Marie, Commissioner
Yes,
Shanks.
Jane, I thought when your committee originally presented this, you talked about several of the different people the committee had heard from, and that one of the concerns was that some of our contractors did indeed have poor records in this area, and that's one of the reasons that this language is included. Was I mistaken, or is that true?
You were not mistaken. That was
Thank
true.
you.
Yeah. Sorry, Commissioner O'Connell. Did you have...
The concern that Anne Marie just brought up could certainly be taken care of by just voicing that you don't have to, ought not to contract with people who have bad records regarding the things that are in our policies. But that's different than requiring them to have written policies that they can show you that have the same things in them. I don't want to take up any more time. That's
Okay, all right. Thank you, Commissioner O'Connell. Commissioner Delandorf.
I think this delivers the appropriate and strong language to any potential bidder for a contract that we are going to keep require them to follow these same policies as we are. And by the way, Bill, Bob, it says anti-discrimination policies. Doesn't say anything about a manual or anything like that. But I think we are setting an example. We are pushing the bar forward. We are saying, we're not going to do business with you guys unless you do this. And this language should be in any RFP that goes out to the public, to a company or to the industry and says, we want you to bid on these trucks. It should be in there. And it says, by bidding, you acknowledge that you adhere to these same policies as we do. I think it's long overdue in our society that we push this issue. The other thing is that I always thought that this only applied to contracts for products and services and not to elected or appointed employees. Is this also, it doesn't say anything about employees, it just says any person firm. Do persons include elected and appointed individuals that are hired under contract to work for the county? Or is it just providers of goods and services? Which does it apply to, or both?
Okay. Sorry. I apologize, Commissioner Delandorf. I was actually looking at a comment that Commissioner Apple put in the chart. Sorry, in the chat. So, and I lost track of the last part of
Okay.
your query. I apologize. But
Well,
I see Bob. Sorry, go ahead.
Should I repeat it?
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
Does this provision apply to third parties, not employees, not officers, not elected, not appointed, but the third parties who are responding to a request for proposals to provide goods and services? Is that what it's limited to? Because that's what I think the wording is. Or does it also apply to people who are hired by the county?
No.
Or are elected by the county?
No.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, they're covered by the paragraph above, probably. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the request for clarification. Okay, Commissioner O'Connell.
I think you could get rid of my heartburn by taking out possess. Possess policies means they've got something in writing. David just said, all we're requiring them to do is adhere to these policies. Well, if that's all we're requiring them to do, I'd be good. But that's not what it says. It says adhere to and possess these policies. Possess means, it can only mean they have them in writing somewhere. That's what I object to. I object to requiring them to have policy manuals that reflect mine. If they tell you, yeah, if they look at what our policies are and say, I adhere to those, enough. If you don't have proof otherwise, I mean.
Okay, there's more comments coming through in the chat, and I see Commissioner Ranker has his hand up. Chair Ranker, go ahead.
I appreciate this language. Tony just put in the chat, and I was going to respond to this anyway, so thank you for teeing it up, Tony. Yes, many larger organizations already have this in place. So do many smaller. And my point that I put in the chat in response to Bill Apple's comment about would this limit the number of contracts, I don't believe so, because everybody is starting to step up in this direction. And this, if somebody wanted a contract with San Juan County and they did not have a written policy, Commissioner O'Connell, how wonderful would it be if this spurred them into thinking about, wow, maybe we should have a written policy. It also does not dictate by any means what that policy says. You could simply say, my company policy is that we're going to adhere to all of the anti-discrimination laws that exist in the state and federal statutes, period. Done. Now you've got a policy. What this does is it begins a conversation to make sure that we're not discriminating. And if that conversation begins in small and large corporations who want to contract with San Juan County, that's a good thing.
Okay, are there any other comments at this point? Okay, yes, Commissioner Gazelle. Sorry, you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Ranker, can you please repeat the item about adhering to state and other governments? Can you repeat that? I missed that part.
All I was saying is that this could push organizations that hadn't thought about it. I don't think there's organizations out there actively discriminating because they want to, or haven't developed a policy yet because they want to be discriminatory. What I'm saying is, I think this begins a conversation in small and large corporations who want to contract with the county. And so they could simply write something that says our company policy is that we're going to adhere to all state and federal anti-discrimination statutes that exist. And now you've got a policy.
Great. Thank you so much for that, because that's exactly my point. The item in number 2, the amendment number 2, refers to section 1, amendment number 1, which has all the words in it and all the verbiage in it. I don't mean to be simplistic, but I was trying to say what you said kind of perked my ears. That's exactly what we should require people to have. But that amendment is saying that you have to have what's in section 1 or in amendment 1. And that's where I am obviously we are all for anti-discrimination. I was kind of concerned that we are tying the hands of people who are making those decisions by having these, all of these are enumerated. That's all.
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So Commissioner Gazelle, I saw the road you were trying to lead me down, and I let you lead me there because I wanted to get there so I could respond to you. So thank you for trying to make an argument that
Typical politician.
Thank you for trying to make an argument that it's all in state and federal statutes so that we don't need to really. It's the same reason we shouldn't do anything on climate change, right? So here's the reality of the situation. By having a county charter amendment, our county is standing up boldly and saying we will not stand for discrimination whatsoever. Most, if not all, of what we put in here is in state and statute, federal statute and protected, but not all of it. There are some things like trans rights, which are still debated at the federal level. There are some other matters with regard to even pregnancy, where some questions have been raised in different case law. So I will say that I think it is absolutely important that we refer to Section 1 of this amendment because it does go further in some cases, and I think that's a good thing. So my point is, the way this reads is it says you must have a policy that is, it basically says similar to, it's my verbiage, to Section 1. If they come forward with a policy, again, I think that then they're saying they have a policy. And to my first point, I think it is really valuable that San Juan County will put this out there to begin the conversation with their contractors. We give away millions of dollars in contracts to different organizations to do work in San Juan County, and we should walk the walk and talk the talk at the same time. We should also invest our money in corporations that do the right thing.
Okay, are there any, thank you, Commissioner, or Mr. Chair. Are there any other comments or questions about this at this stage? Commissioner Lafferty.
I wonder if Commissioner Davies can say more about his comment in the chat about best intentions.
Commissioner Davies.
Sure. I want to acknowledge that Commissioner Delandorf did have his hand up first, but I think that responds, and maybe that's not the exact terminology that that the prosecuting attorney used, but something along those lines. I just feel like there is, and maybe I should pull that up to be more specific, but I do think that having it specific and prescriptive is important now. And best intentions is a much easier, that's not even checking a box in my mind. So I think anyone in a bidding process would say that about anything to meet the letter or to appear to meet the letter in order to be a qualified bidder. And in this case, I don't feel like that's sufficient or doesn't meet the bar for me. So I think because the public will have a touch on this and be able to decide whether or not it meets their minimum standards is important enough. But I think I would agree it's important to be very specific and pretty linear on this topic. And best intentions is a bit of a, it feels like it's an exhaust valve or an escape valve opportunity.
Thank you, Commissioner Davies. Yeah, and that is where our subcommittee members land on this as well. So I see Commissioner Delandorf has his hand up. Is there anyone else who has their hand up or would like to speak to this prior to having, yeah, Commissioner Lafferty, go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify what Commissioner Davies just said. So does that require additional changes, or your group, your subcommittee has already made those changes? So the language of best intentions is no longer a part of your document. Is that correct?
I'll respond and just say, I don't think that it was part of the commenting from the prosecuting attorney's office.
Okay.
And I think we were appreciating that, but moving past that for more definitive language.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Delandorf.
Yeah, in comment to both Tony and Kevin. Kevin's absolutely right. There are things in here that aren't in the national statutes, state statutes, and given our current political climate, there could be very well things that are now you can't discriminate against nationally, but are going to be removed by a party who is, I will unnamed, but they're perfectly capable of removing some of these things from the national statute. So I think we have to have our own list, even if it's duplicative in part. The other thing is, I think under possess in the second sentence or the second provision, possess, I think of possession is not necessarily of the material kind, but also of the mental kind. If a small business with 1 or 2 employees wants to bid and the owner says, yeah, I don't believe in discrimination and I will not let it happen. I have a policy. It's not in writing. We're a small firm. We can't afford the legal fees. To me, that would be sufficient. And it doesn't have to be in writing as Bob has suggested. Thank you.
Okay, I've got a smile on one face. I've got a nod from Commissioner O'Connell and a smile. I've got a Commissioner Anderson smiling. Okay, where are we at, you guys? Okay, so have we exhausted the discussion or is there any further comment before we move on? Mr. Chair.
Yeah, just point of order, not necessarily point of order, but point of process, which actually isn't a call, but it would be helpful for me when we're moving these things forward, if we had an idea of where folks are on these individual issues, so that as you finalize the document. So we're looking for action today. And so what would be good is just like the last one, where basically there was a nodding and consensus that, you know, folks are saying, yeah, let's delete the felon language. On this one, I'd be curious to know if there's folks, if folks want to delete this, if they want to go back to best intentions, which one of the reasons the subcommittee got rid of that was because it's totally unenforceable.
Sorry,
You know,
just,
sense.
Mr. Chair, sorry, just to be clear, we didn't have that language in the first place. We never had best efforts, best intention.
I know. I'm sorry I blended those with this previous conversation, but I'm just saying it would be good to get a sense of consensus before your final vote on this, on what the sticklers are, so that you can address those. So, and I think that you were starting to do, you were saying, I've got a couple smiles, but.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm trying to establish at this point is if we are okay with the language as it is, or as Mr. Chair raised, are there any outstanding issues that any of you have, or could we move on to the next amendment and with a view to taking a vote on this proposed amendment on non-discrimination, as well as the other one? Or, yeah, sorry if that's entirely not clear.
Madam Chair.
Yep.
Thank you. It may also be that if there's more than just a tweak, that we don't call for action on this today, that we say, okay, we're going to take in your feedback and come back next week with the final document, or schedule another meeting, what have you. But I want you to get it right. This is really, really important. And so if the commission, what I'm getting at is, it would be a shame to call a vote and people vote against the entire document because of something that could have been edited. Because once you have a vote, then there's you know, and so if there's tweaks that members have to perfect this, I think it would be important to have that conversation.
Okay, yeah, so thank you for that. I see that Commissioner Apple has his hand up, so as he hasn't spoken to this yet, please go ahead.
Just a comment. I have to say personally, I would abstain until I hear the prosecutor's response. There are, to me, some legal issues that I don't want to see go down the stream, but that's for a later discussion. But I want to say I agree with the thrust of this, but I have some legal questions, and I don't want to catch myself in a bind. But otherwise, I support the intent.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Apple. That's clear. I see I've got hands up from Commissioner O'Connell, who had his hand up next, I believe. And then, or no, Commissioner Gazelle, you had your hand up first? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm also, even though I support the concept of what this First Amendment is doing, and the Second Amendment as well, I think that I'm going to abstain as well. I think there are issues, maybe not the same as what Commissioner Appel is thinking of, but I have other issues with it that it could really cause some issues with the way we do business as a county. Yes, I understand what Commissioner Ranker is saying, but I agree with some of it, but not all of it. So thank you for listening. This is a lot of good work, but I think the concept is great. And some of the enumerated items are great, but I'm a little bit concerned.
Okay, Commissioner O'Connell?
It will be like a knife in my heart if I cannot vote for this amendment. I love this amendment and it is so important for our county. I appeal to you to take out the words "and possess" and leave it that they are required to adhere to those policies. If you do that, I'll be able to vote for it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Davies, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This will be a challenge, I think, to those of you speaking up, and it will help me in my thinking about this, especially with another week of work, to know, is the issue here that this is a burden of some kind to small business, either financial or an unfairness question of corporation versus smaller mom and pop, or is this somehow debilitating to in-county potential in-county bidders? Or it would help me understand some more the origin of the pushback. We might be able to meet that, but I'm not clear on why this feels unfair is my word. That's the impression I'm getting from others.
Right, or prohibitive in terms of what entities might enter into bids on. And given that companies also are meant to be adhering to state law in this regard anyway. So, okay, I saw another hand up though, and yes, it was Commissioner no, it was Commissioner C. Sorry.
It's okay. I think Commissioner O'Connell has made a compelling argument on the word possess. And I think if that were changed, it would be a good thing. And it would relieve some of the thoughts on this, because it is important.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Commissioner Delandorf?
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I think it's maybe redundant. Adhere, as long as they adhere to something, wherever it comes from, that is consistent with our beliefs, I think it's fine. I'd be okay with that. The other thing I want to say in answer to Dave, not Dave, to Kyle, is the reason this is in here. Now I'm losing my train of thought. Oh my God.
It's so hard, I know.
Okay. The reason this is in here, if we're requiring this of our county officers, our county employees, if we're requiring it of everybody who works for the county and in the county, why can't we require it of anybody who does business under contract to the county? I mean, I think that's the argument. To tell contractors who come in and bid on projects, oh, we're not going to hold you to the same standards. That to me is a no starter, a no brainer, or whatever. You have to require everybody to meet the same standards. But I'm okay with taking out possess, as Maureen and Bob have stated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Delandorf. Oh, and I see Commissioner Brownell has her hand up.
Yeah, this has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I do want to see the language about the courts, addressing the court issue that you said was going to be in this section, that it was going to be clarified. You're going to put in some language about justice not looking at court decisions. And you were talking about some language about that.
Oh, that's
for the commission.
Yeah, that's related to the second amendment. We're still on the first amendment. Yeah, we're still talking about clause 2 of amendment number 1.
And I would say, just listening to this discussion in terms of no one likes compromise, but it seems like the way that this may go forward in a way that is not voted down is to try and accept the compromise of taking the,
Yeah.
it was a P word. It was a P word.
Possess.
Possessed.
Okay,
Out of that part.
thank you for your 2 cents on this, Commissioner Brown. I'll appreciate it. Okay, so
Madam Chair, I'm going to take the gavel away from you for a second. We're past due on our public comment.
Oh.
And so I want to break this discussion and allow us to have public comment because we have several members of the public here.
sure.
And let folks weigh in on that, although several have left too. We were up, anyway. So I want to allow that, and then we can come back to this discussion. But I will say with this discussion, I really appreciate the dialogue that's taking place. This is exactly the sort of dialogue we need to have because it's the same sort of dialogue our communities are going to have. So with that, I would like to pause this discussion and open us up for public comment. So are there any members of the public who would like to speak today? If so, if you could turn on your video and unmute yourselves. Okay. Any members of the public? Okay. So we'll go back to you at this point and allow you to continue chairing. And then it feels like, I will just say that there needs to be a bit more fine tuning. And so maybe not calling the vote today, but allowing commissioners to see the amended language may be good. And I still think this discussion is fruitful and really positive for us to be having. But it feels to me, and you tell me, Commissioner Fuller, if you disagree, that we take into account, the subcommittee take into account what's been said today, have one more meeting and bring it back to the next CRC meeting as well with the perfected language. You're muted, Jane.
Yes, thank you. Okay, I think that sounds wise. I have seen another comment from Commissioner Apple in the chat asking us to go back to the prosecuting attorney's office again to have this language considered. So, and he, prosecuting attorney Gaylord did already provide his comments on this, and so we can refer back to those. And so whether we take possess out or not may not satisfy what his position is. So I think we need to come back one more time to you all with this, having taken on board your thoughts and your contributions, which are really appreciated, and yeah, represent next week on this particular proposed amendment. And I see that Commissioner Delandorf has another comment.
We need to start making decisions. We're kicking the ball down the court all the time. We just started on one issue. We've got like 5 or 10 more on this agenda. If we don't decide now, we're going to be debating this thing for the next 6 months. We need to decide. And the only issue I see that's on the table that is preventing us from deciding is about the status of accused or convicted criminals. And we'd agreed to take that out. So why don't we just move forward? And if there are abstentions, there are abstentions. We don't have to have 18-0. If we're going to do that, we're never going to finish. There would be no amendments on the ballot in November.
Thank you, Commissioner Delandorf. So, I mean, if that's how people feel now, what we have on the table is also removing the word "and possess," okay, in clause 2 of the non-discrimination section. So
remove it.
Now, are we in a position, if we remove that, to take a vote on this?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, me too.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So with that, Mr. Chair, shall we just move on to Amendment 2 prior to taking a vote on this?
If folks are ready to vote on Amendment 1, I would move it.
Okay. So can I have a motion?
I so move. We adopt it.
No. We got to state this. So
Oh.
Whoever puts the motion on the floor, it should not be me, because even though I'm not acting as chair right now, I'm still chair of this full committee. But the motion will need to state that we are adopting Amendment 1 as written with the changes that we remove the word possess and we remove the reference to, hang on, let me get my notes. And we remove the reference to felonies or convictions, that language as well.
Right. It's and possess.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yes.
I'm just clarifying. So that would be the
Yes.
motion that somebody
I
needs.
second that.
Okay, well, who put the motion? Bob, is that your motion then?
It is.
No, you made it. You made it together.
I just said that I can't.
I move that we adopt as an amendment to the charter, the language we have just gone over with the portion involving criminal convictions struck and with the words and possess struck.
I second again.
Okay, go
Call the
ahead.
vote.
You have is there any further discussion? Kyle Davies. I'll take over, Madam Chair. Just for this, Kyle Davies.
Point made earlier about just adhere to having really no enforceability, I think is really important. And I appreciate that having possess in there is challenging because we're not sure the extent to which the county can or will go and evaluate. But I think a single word here has the opportunity to essentially vacate most of the work.
Commissioner O'Connell.
Response?
Bob.
Okay, do you want to take a guess at how many contractors on the planet have a personnel, I mean, not a personnel, but a policy section that includes what we have in there? I'll take a guess. 0.
I strongly disagree in the way that policies get changed. The way that change happens is by the folks who are contracting people requiring things like this. That's how change happens.
Well,
I
we
will
should
support
require it.
this without possess. But the way change happens is that governments start mandating that their contractors, who they supply millions of dollars to, act the same way they require their employees and their citizens to act.
Exactly. Do we want, is our point that we want somebody to have a written manual, or that we want somebody who will adhere to those policies and not discriminate against people on that basis? Which thing is important to us? Not the book of policies, please.
Okay, you've got there, David, I see your hand. There was another hand before yours though. I can't remember. Did somebody else have a hand up? David Delandorf.
Can we call a vote, or whatever the term is? Can we just go ahead and call the vote instead of having a debate between Bob and Kyle? Again, we're getting bogged down.
If you're trying to say call the question.
Call the question. Thank
and
you. That's
is there a second to calling the question? Is that Tony? Are you seconding that? No, you're. Is there support to call the question?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, may I say,
Go ahead, Tony.
when someone calls for the question, again, immediately at that moment, there should be a vote to consider that
And
or
thank you,
not.
Tony. That's what I'm saying right now. I just said, is there support? And so that's.
Maureen seconded it.
Okay, so with the call the question, I'm not sure you actually need a second. The point is, the question has been called. Who's in favor of calling the question? I was just trying to keep it casual, Tony. Who's in support? It's the same as saying who's in favor. So who's in favor of
Thank you.
calling the question? Please raise your hand if you're in favor of calling the question. Okay, the question has been called. All those in favor? All those in favor of adopting Amendment 1 with the changes that we suggested, which are removal of the word and possess and the reference to the felony criminal stuff. Okay, all those in favor? Okay, any opposed? Kyle Davies is opposed. Any abstentions? Okay, hang on. I've got, I just want to get this down. I've got Bill, Olivia, Dick, Paul, Tom. Is that it for who's abstaining? Tony. Tony's abstaining as well. Okay, and Kyle was opposed. Can I get everybody in favor again, please? Okay, I've got Janet. C. I've got Anne Marie.
6.
Dave. Who's ever counting, I get to, and I don't want to hear you. I lost it. Thanks again. Liz. David. Sharon. Bob. Jane. Tom, you got to you count yourself, dude. Okay, I'm going to say who I have in favor. Oh, and I've got Patty too. Okay, so I have Patty, Janet, Maureen C, Anne Marie, David, Liz, David, Dave, Sharon, Bob, Jane. Is that it?
Are you voting?
Yes, yeah, I'll put myself in, yes, but I'm just kidding. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. All right, so 11 votes, motion carries. So I have Patty, Janet, Maureen C, Anne Marie, David, Dave, Liz, Sharon, Bob, Jane, and myself voting in favor. Kyle Davies voting opposed. Bill, Olivia, Dick, Paul, Tom, and Tony abstaining. Motion carries. Amendment 1 is passed.
Yay!
Okay, with that, we can move on to amendment number 2. So I introduced it to you all. Would you like me to share a screen on it again, or are there comments or questions on it? Just as a refresher, I did mention that we had received some comment from Commissioner Apple on it yesterday, and that we need to take that his comments into consideration in terms of ensuring that there's clarity regarding this commission not overreaching or overtaking, for example, anything in relation to legally mandated responsibilities of the justices in our county and the prosecuting attorney in our county. So with that, if we can have some discussion
Just as we lead into this, we're 15 minutes over on this total agenda item, and I have 5 more agenda items. So I'm going to go 10 minutes, and if it's not resolved, we're going to move on. Sorry.
Okay.
The other items there's some items that have to be discussed tonight.
Yep.
So I've got it, and if we can come back to it, we can. But I think it's important to start the dialogue tonight and recognize that for this second amendment, we may need to revisit it.
Yep, agreed. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner O'Connell, you have your hand up.
Yes, could I inquire of Commissioner Bill where he sees the present language interfering with the jobs of the prosecuting attorney and judges, et cetera? I can see where certain language would, but I don't see that language in there.
Thank you,
Did I not
Commissioner
get that right?
O'Connell. Commissioner Apple, did you want to respond to that?
It really doesn't matter what my opinion is. It matters what the prosecuting attorney's opinion is. And that's why I don't want to get into an argument between lawyers. And I don't think it'll be helpful discussion. It'll probably only lead to confusion. I do have questions. I've been as clear as I have. In fact, I know that I got ahead of the wagon on this, but I think the prosecutor's involvement in this process is extremely important, because I think people are reaching too far, or maybe, and I don't want to end up with a product that gets misrepresented to the public or creates a negative concern, because this is a very important proposition. And I'm concerned that it be done right and clearly. It doesn't matter what Bob and I think.
Well, I would chime in and say you're both.
Mr. Chair, sorry. Okay, did you want to make a comment in response to that, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
You're both commissioners, so your opinion is very valid. Our prosecuting attorney has weighed in and already stated his opinion on this subject, and our judge did as well, and they have different opinions. So which legal voice do we listen to? We've also consulted several other attorneys, some of which are former prosecuting attorneys, who have had a difference of opinion. And so I think the language as is actually pretty good. I think it could be refined with regard to, and I've been thinking since I read your email, Bill, there some sentence that could clarify that, and I think your wording was individual decisions versus statistics or something, and I'm summarizing. And I think this commission could look at statistics. They could look at, are the number of people being convicted, are they 98% Latino in our community? That's a statistic that this commission could tackle. Does the commission look into an individual decision by the judge or an individual decision by the prosecutor on who they're going to prosecute or not prosecute? Absolutely not. And I think this reads well enough to address that. But based on the email that you wrote to Prosecutor Vera, Deputy Prosecutor Amy Vera, I believe that some clarification there is necessary, which is what came up in the beginning of this meeting. But I'm concerned if we keep going back and forth and asking the same answer and asking the same question and expecting a different result, to David Delendorf's point, we're not going to finish.
Can we share screen?
Sure, and I see that Commissioner Apple has his hand up, so I'll share a screen. And Commissioner Apple, would you like to go ahead?
Yes, I don't want to be put in, I hear about other lawyers who are never named. That's okay. We can talk to anybody we want to, but I don't want to go into putting something before the public that our own lawyer disagrees with. That is the lawyer who has to defend it if there's an attack on it. I don't see any mileage in going against our own lawyer's advice, particularly as it becomes public and weakens confidence in it. I honestly cannot support anything that our prosecutor doesn't okay. I know it's slavish. I know I'm a commissioner. I can have my own opinion, but this is not a legal panel. It is a political panel, and we should keep that in mind.
Right, okay. Mr. Chair, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can see each other. I would like to remind, prior to allowing David Delendorf to speak, I would like to remind the commissioners that part of what the prosecuting attorney wanted us to do was to remove the word justice from the name of this commission. Okay, so the subcommittee that has been working on this for more than the past 4 months cannot accept that. And that is not a legal opinion. That is advice. That is his recommendation. And so we've got some difficulty in terms of understanding how best to address his views, his comments, his opinions, in part, may I say, because the intent that you are suggesting here, Commissioner Apple, that this commission wants to do anything to interfere with the roles of the prosecuting attorney or either justice in the county, there is no such intent. And so, however, we've not been able to have a discussion with the prosecuting attorney to really enable him to fully understand the intent behind this commission, although he has been looking at this language for some time. So I just wanted to share that. So with that, I will turn to, I have Commissioner O'Connell and Commissioner Delendorf's hands up.
And we have 3 more minutes for this subject.
Okay, Commissioner O'Connell.
Yes, I just want to say that no one could agree more strongly that we cannot be telling the prosecuting attorney which cases he should prosecute and not, or any of that. That's completely beyond our purview. However, I don't think we've done that. I don't think anything in the language that you put down there suggests that and does that. I'm good with it. I'm prepared to vote for it.
Commissioner Delendorf.
I agree with Bob. It says advisory, it says recommend. There's no legislative authority here. I'm confused though as to whether or not Randy has blessed this language. I get mixed messages as to whether or not. Can you clarify, has Randy approved this with the exception of the word, including the word justice?
No.
He has. Okay. Okay. So I agree that it needs to go to Randy, as everybody seems to think. We don't want to go sideways with Randy.
Okay, so Commissioner Delendorf, if we go back to the prosecuting attorney with this, we're likely to get the same advice back that we got before. So,
with regard to justice only, or are there other things that we're not following his advice on? So I didn't.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Chair, go ahead.
David, I would encourage you to go back and read Randy's memo that he sent us to the full commission well over a week ago. It went into several different aspects. To Commissioner Fuller's point, there are some aspects of that which are clear legal advice, which we definitely need to pay attention to, because as Commissioner Apple said, he will be the one defending this or not defending this as it goes forward. Well, he will defend it. There are also pieces that were suggestions. And our prosecutor has done this numerous times in memos where some things are very clear. Hey, there's a legal problem here. And some things are, hey, I'm advising you to think about this. On those, it is up to, on all of them, frankly, it's up to us as individually elected commissioners on whether or not we support something to go forward. But what I have been trying to do is on the very clear legal matters, we want to really try and address those, because our prosecutor is giving us solid legal advice based on his 2 decades of experience in his position. On areas where he is advising us or making a suggestion, we can follow it or not follow it with a little more ease. And some of these have been suggestions and some of them aren't. What I'm going to do is ask the prosecutor to join us at a future meeting, and we can have a back and forth with him on this if we have time. However, we really need to move forward. And I don't want to cut this discussion short, but we have some other matters that we have to discuss this evening. I am also, no one's going to love me for this. As a matter of fact, you're all going to hate me, but I already talked to Catherine about possible need. I'm going to schedule a full CRC meeting from 4 to 6 on Friday evening. And so, because we obviously need the time. And so we will revisit that at the end of this meeting, but that's my suggestion right now, because we're not getting through these matters. And so we're going to have more than one meeting this week and probably next week. This is a really good discussion, and I don't want to cut it short, but again, we've got 35 minutes left, and when there's some other subjects that have to be discussed tonight. And so our folks, I don't expect you to be okay, but can we cut this discussion short and continue it? Or let me put this out there. We have to have a discussion on climate and environment this evening. I'm going to suggest the other updates are done. And then I have 2 or 3 items under new business that I needed to raise with the full commission for us to consider. So would you like to continue with this discussion and then we move on to climate and environment? Or we move to climate and environment now, go to new business and try and come back to this? What's the sense of people here?
Move adoption.
Move
adoption of the amendment.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a motion. Is there a second? Anne Marie, are you seconding?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second to move the adoption of, I'm sorry, Jane, under yours, was this amendment 2?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to move adoption of amendment 2 under discussion.
Call the question. After Tony.
No, we're going to be strict on this going forward, because Tony gives me the stink eye anytime I'm not. So the question has been called. Is there support to call the question? All those in favor of calling the question?
Yes, I'm not with Tony.
No,
In favor of calling the question? I only see 5 hands. The question is not called. Back to discussion. Any further discussion? Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am completely opposed to amendment number 2, especially since amendment number 1 passed, because that's going to put undue hardship on county and small business in this county that will have to adhere to some of the items in section 1. So I would be opposing it.
We're not talking about the same thing. Mr. Chair, could you please clarify where we're at here?
We're on amendment 2, but the reason I was asking us to move on and not call the question at this point or not put a motion on the floor at this point is because I think there needs to be a little bit further discussion on this.
I thought somebody made a motion, Mr. Chair.
We are under discussion of that motion.
Well, I did discuss it.
I know that. And
Thank you.
what I'm saying is,
So I'm not sure what the conflict is right now.
You have the wrong information.
As the chair of the subcommittee pointed out, I think that there was some confusion, maybe not entirely based on your comment, but from others as well, on exactly where we are.
Yes.
And so I think, and see, there's other nodding. So thank you, Commissioner Gazelle. I would ask you to be recognized before you speak. So going forward, I'm going to get even stricter on Robert's rules, first of all. Secondly, What I'm looking for is right now we have a motion and a second on the table to adopt the one that was being referred to as amendment number 2 from the Justice and Equity Subcommittee. There was, however, some question and Tony, I think in your reference to the back and forth, the subcommittee chair felt that you were maybe confused on exactly where we are, but I won't put that into your head, but others are nodding and saying so. So do we want to move forward with this motion, or do we want to have further discussion is the question I'm asking of the person who put the motion on the table and the second.
All right, I put the motion up. Can we screen share so we make sure that everyone knows what we're talking about?
That would be
amendment.
beautiful. Let's do that.
I'm just about pulling it up. This is what we're currently deliberating on.
Let's everybody just take a moment to read it.
We read it.
No.
So I will attempt to recap some of the points. Commissioner Apple had raised the point that he was concerned that the prosecutor had raised a point in his original memo that that language would push the prosecutor's office or the courts unduly. But as Commissioner O'Connell raised and Commissioner Fuller raised, it talks about advisory recommendations and so on. And so this is an advisory committee. This is not an oversight committee as was originally proposed, which was the original issue. And so that's why some folks felt that that was addressed. I'm just trying to summarize. I see Commissioner Garcia's hand.
Yeah, I just want to address the one thing that Randy had put in his memo about the word justice. I'm wondering why we need to have justice in this necessarily. Equity, inclusion, it's all there. Do we need to say justice? Because maybe that does push it over to the courts or whatever your idea about what justice is. I mean, I don't know. I just having it up there because you guys are strong about it.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to, I'm happy to have Commissioner O'Connell and Commissioner Apple speak to this, but I appreciate Commissioner Garcia raising this because it was something we discussed extensively since the 3 weeks ago that we received his comment on this. So thank you for raising it. And I think I saw Commissioner O'Connell's hand and then Commissioner Apple, and I would like to hear them on this.
Right, and this is an opinion.
You're frozen, Bob.
Go to Apple.
Commissioner Apple, go ahead until we get Commissioner O'Connell back.
As slavish as I seem with respect to the prosecutor's office, if Les Randy can convince us that this is a legal issue, it's our business. He's the lawyer. And everything Kevin said about our decision-making power and our role applies to this kind of thing if it isn't a legal issue. And frankly, I support the word justice.
Thank you, Commissioner Apple. Commissioner O'Connell, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, please go ahead.
The prosecuting attorney looks at the word justice and he thinks of what he does, which is to prosecute people who have committed crimes. The sheriff looks at the word justice and thinks about what he does about patrolling and keeping the streets safe. But the justice we're talking about is way, way broader than that. The justice we're talking about is the way we treat each other. We want to treat each other in a just fashion. The idea that it should be narrowed down to just what the prosecutor does and take it out because of that is patently ridiculous.
Yep. Just thank you, Commissioner O'Connell. Commissioner Abreu, just to clarify, I saw you put social justice in there. The social justice is even further broadened, and that's not what we're talking about. So we don't want to go there. That's another rabbit hole. So let's just leave that. Commissioner Garcia, you look like you wanted to have a response. Go ahead, please.
I just wondered if there wasn't a better word, because justice has so many connotations that people do mix it up, as was just pointed out. I didn't know.
So thank you, Commissioner Garcia. We as a subcommittee have been called Justice and Equity since the day we first met on February 22nd as a subcommittee. And I think we've been pretty clear with our work with the commission about the kinds of things we have been researching, the discussions and interviews we've held with people, and all the rest of it. I think we've been fairly clear also in the presentation that we made to the full commission with our PowerPoint presentation on the 26th of May as to the types of issue of justice we were deliberating and discussing and how we came up with amendments. So I think it is our responsibility to go to the public and explain what we're talking about. And in the voters pamphlet, it'll need to be very clear. So that's I hope you don't mind that I just made that comment in response. There are significant problems with removing the word justice. That's the position of the subcommittee. Sorry, go ahead.
Can I call the question again?
Commissioner Delandorf has his hand up. Is there something he?
Okay,
David, if he's calling the question has been called.
I had my hand up first.
He spoke before you were recognized, so the question has been called. So do a majority of the members support the calling of the question?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Put your hand up
Yes.
or say yes.
Okay, the question has been called. All those in favor? Okay, hang on, I'm gonna write you all down here. Okay, I've got Jane.
2, 3, 4, 5.
Sorry, guys.
2, 3, 4,
Hey, dude, mute yourself, man.
5.
Tom, mute. Catherine, will you mute Tom?
He's muted.
Okay, I think I've got Jane, Kevin, Maureen, Ann, Janet, Dave, Liz, Bob, David, Sharon. Did I miss anybody who voted yes?
Anne Marie, did you get Anne Marie?
I got Anne Marie. I'm sorry. I was trying to write fast, so I wrote Anne. I didn't write Anne Marie. Sorry. Okay.
And yourself.
And yourself.
That's 10 votes. We will still say who's opposed and abstains, but looks like motion carries. So who's opposed? Tom Starr. And who's abstaining? Okay, I've got Bill, Patty, Kyle,
Oops.
Paul, Dick, Olivia, Tony. Is that it? Bill, Patty, Kyle, Paul, Dick, Olivia, Tony. Anybody else abstaining?
Janet, did Janet vote?
Janet voted in favor. Motion carries.
Favor.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I would like to just clarify that one of the subcommittee co-chair is abstaining because he feels we're leaving questions on the floor. So I have something of an issue with that. But maybe, so.
Okay, I can't believe this, but I'm actually going to agree with David Delandorf, which is that we've got to start moving forward. And now that said, I will counterpoint myself. So I'm going to be like David Delandorf again. And I would say that I was actually in favor of postponing this for exactly that reason, because I wanted to have more discussion, because I actually thought this was a very thoughtful discussion and a very important discussion for us to have. But we can't continue it this evening. It's not fair to the other subjects that have to be discussed, and for those of us on this commission and the public who are here and people that will watch it in the future, because we have some very important agenda items to talk about. And we've got probably an hour left worth of agenda items, and we've got 20 minutes. And so unfortunately, we have to move forward. So question is passed, or the motion is carried. And I hope that those questions that were left on the table can continue to be discussed, and people can raise them and we can see how we can address those. Janet, you have a comment?
Isn't this going to 6:30?
It's advertised till 6. If it's 6, I would love it to go to 6:30, but the agenda went, but actually you're beating me to my next punch, which was going to be that I was going to say that we go to 6:30 this evening. So why don't we just do that now? Is everybody in favor of us? Actually, I'm just going to suggest we're going to 6:30 as the chair. And so hopefully that'll be all right. We won't lose too many people, but it was advertised till 6. And Catherine, in the future, I know that I had asked to try and minimize some of these, but in the future, let's make them all 2.5 hours, because in the next 2 weeks, I'm hoping we finish business. Are folks okay if we move on at this point?
Please.
Okay, good. Sharing.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, I'm sorry, who called the question for that vote?
Bob did.
Thank you.
Okay. I do think we just, you guys, this has been painful, so it feels less celebratory, but we just passed 2 motions that will have an incredibly positive impact on the future of this county, and more importantly, the residents of this county. The Justice and Equity Committee is to be commended for the work they've done.
Hear, hear.
And I
Whole
think,
heart. Yeah.
and I think that a number of the abstentions that took place on the first and second vote were exactly to the point that Jane just made, which is there were still some remaining questions, but it is critical that these things move forward. So I would like to encourage the Justice and Equity Committee and others who weighed in this evening with very strong opinions to maybe sit in on that committee. Since it's a small committee, it could use, it would allow additional members to sit in, so that this is truly perfected before we're finalizing our documents in the next 2 weeks. Because I think it's really, really close and it's a good document. David, I'm not going to even recognize you. I'm going to move on. I'm sorry. So David, so I want to not have updates on term limits and revised introduction other than to say those have been finalized. The prosecuting attorney has them, and we are almost pretty much done with those. And so term limits and revised introductions, we'll see what we hear back from the prosecutor. We've heard some stuff already, but not entirely. The other matter that we really want to discuss this evening is the Climate and Environment Committee. And we need an update from Commissioner, from Anne Marie on that. And then we also, I was hoping to get into a discussion this evening on splitting our ballot between 21 and 22 November. And I'm going to suggest that we possibly postpone that this evening, but we'll see how long climate and environment takes. So with that, let's move into climate and environment. And Anne-Marie, Commissioner Shanks, if you want to lead us off on this.
Sure. And I just want everybody to know that we're moving fast. We're slowing down. Climate and Environment's going to meet again tomorrow. We met this morning, and then we're going to get something out to you as soon as we can before it ever comes back to you as a full CRC. Okay, so having said that, Tuesday, San Juan County Council met in a motion, not in an ordinance, in a motion. They took a division and made it a department, and that's the Environmental Resource Division became a department. They're still working on what the name of that's going to be. They also made the existing manager of environmental resources the director of that department. They added climate elements, and they're adding staff to that. And they also are looking at or have established committee, an advisory committee to go with that. We are pleased that they heard our voice. We are pleased that they heard the voice of all of the people that have spoken out in support of a climate and environment program. Having said that, we understand that a lot of the real teeth that we wanted to put in to this program, this policy, this amendment is not in the motion that was passed. So we are still looking for avenues to really strengthen this and have it do what we heard the people say they wanted it to do. And we are looking at one amendment that will include creating a San Juan County Climate and Environment Commission that is appointed by the San Juan County Council. And the intention of that commission, okay, and we're working on all of this language, is to ensure that the resolution 2020, which was passed in the spring or the summer of 2019 on climate, is carried out. And we also want to ensure that there's adequate public engagement and oversight in the county's efforts to address climate change and protect our natural environment. Having said that, we're talking about a 9-member commission that would represent some of the entities that currently now work with as advisory bodies to the Environmental Resources Department. And just to renew your memory on that, that might be the Marine Resources Committee, it might be the Salmon Recovery Committee, the Clean Water Committee, there's a Solid Waste Advisory Committee, and different programs like that. Additionally, we want to make sure, and you may remember this from our document, that we had a county resident who was a home builder, because we heard from other organizations that they thought it was important that a home builder be involved. We also thought it was important that we have youth involved. We thought it was important that we had representation from the Coast Salish nation. And we also thought that it was really important that we have a couple of at-large members. So that's the big picture of kind of what this commission would look like. What would the commission do? And this is just right now, I'm talking to you from a draft. They'll have oversight over the department in San Juan County government responsible for environmental protection and climate change. They'll advise the department director at public monthly meetings. They'll conduct searches and vet future candidates for director of this department and make recommendations of an individual to the county council for hiring. With the support of the staff of this department, they will develop and update annually a climate and environmental action plan. They'll conduct monthly public meetings with the director in an oversight role for the department, and they'll release the public annual updates on the progress in implementing this action plan, including actions taken and not taken by the county departments and elected officials regarding the implementation of the action plan. So as you can see, things have become simpler in terms of the Charter Review Commission. We still have a fair amount of work to do. And I just want to assure you that we will be coming back and giving you a reasonable amount of time to look at this and everything before we have further conversation. That's all I have to say right now.
Okay, thank you very much, Anne-Marie. So, and I'd like to give a little bit of an update as well on this subject. So at our last meeting, we had a discussion about the back and forth with the county council, and we also talked about how it was time to come to consensus with them, or at least try to find consensus, recognizing that often that's the art of politics. We also recognized that the idea of competing ballot measures or an ordinance versus a ballot measure gets complicated for the voters, and also doesn't necessarily end in a positive way for the actions that we're trying to advance. So the discussion that the subcommittee had was, I think, very fruitful. And the idea that has arisen, as Anne-Marie just went over, is that instead of, so originally our proposal was to have an elected official with a new department. And the county council, as Anne-Marie just went over, and many of you are aware, created much of that department. But what I want to alert you to is that last week I went over to Lopez and I had a very long, very productive conversation with Councilmember Stevens to broach the idea of, hey, how can we work better together? How can we come to some sort of consensus? How can we make this work? And I thought it was a very positive conversation. And I presented to him this idea of a department that would have a stronger commission. And that commission model was brought to us by several citizens, and some of it was brought up in public comment. We have this model already in San Juan County with the land bank, where in the past, the process at the land bank is that the land bank commission has done the entire hiring process for the new director when they come on board. The land bank commissioners, they did the search, they conduct the interviews, and then they recommend a candidate to the county council for appointment. The other model along these lines is the Northwest Straits Commission, which has been a very successful model, which a resident of our communities on the MRC, Christina Coons, testified about the Marine Resource Committee and the Northwest Straits Commission being successful models in our town hall. Anyway, out of that, we started looking at those models, and those models work. And so as Commissioner Shanks just shared, what I talked to Jamie about, and I was very clear to Councilmember Stevens that I was not speaking for the commission, but this was an idea, which was instead of having elected, we would be willing to not consider an elected official anymore, but instead consider an appointed position. Because one of the things we've also heard from members of the public is that if it's elected, you don't have as big of a pool of candidates. And members of this commission have said that in several meetings, that wouldn't it be great if we could do a national search and get the most qualified person to be director of this department? So the idea was that what if we didn't have an elected and instead we had an appointed, but that department still needs autonomy. Our county manager, in response to Councilwoman Wolf, in their meeting on Tuesday, Councilwoman Wolf said, hey, if there's a conflict between these two departments, between community development and planning and this new environmental department, will that come to the county council to be discussed? And he said, no. He said, that would be dealt with within my office. Now I'm totally summarizing, but that was the gist of the answer. And what we want to do is make sure that there is a department that has its own autonomy and has teeth, but it is also directly responsible to the citizens of San Juan County, and it is transparent how that works. And so the idea that came up since Tuesday's action was the commission that Anne-Marie Shanks just presented to you. What I discussed with Jamie before his Tuesday meeting, I met with him last week, was the idea that either that by charter, we would create the entire department with an appointed official and have this strong commission. What they adopted on Tuesday was basically our plan without the strong commission. And we've gone through this massive discussion of how to create a commission back and forth with our prosecutor and so on. We know that we have the ability to do so within the charter. And so the idea that came up between Tuesday action by the county council and today is this idea of what if we recognize that the county council has taken a strong action and it's gotten us like all the way to the 2-yard line, but you don't spike the football on the 2-yard line. What you do is get it across that goal line. And getting across that goal line means having a commission that forces transparency, it forces accountability with the public, because the public is overseeing this. And we use the model from the Land Bank and the Northwest Straits Commission. And so that's what's been discussed. And anybody wants to go review the meeting that took place this morning. It was very clear that language isn't perfected. And so it was a suggestion that we not try and push it through this evening, but instead brief folks this evening so folks are aware of what the discussion is, aware of the meeting I had with Councilmember Stevens. And again, I want to clarify, I was very clear, and he was too. He was not speaking for the council and I was not speaking for the commission. This was two people getting together to see if we could start to build consensus. And I think we're really close. And I think this actually strengthens their position so much that it would be one of the foremost and exciting proposals that we've seen on the environment or climate change ever in San Juan County, because it would really cause action to take place. So there's my update to you, so everybody knows what I've been working on the last few days as well. So do folks have questions or comments on this? And I know it's hard without language in front of you. This is really an update or a briefing so that folks are up to speed. Let's go with Tony. Tony, was that a hand? Yeah. Tony, your backdrop blends with your hand when it's up close. It's something off of Star Trek. I don't know.
Sorry, my bad. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the update. I listened in to the meeting on Tuesday, and my sense was which has always been my sense, that we don't need an elected official for this position. And I was glad that the council voted to make a department that's under their supervision in a way, because they have the authority to do what they needed to do. What I'm asking now is, whatever the commission makeup, that of course they did approve a commission, but without a makeup. They're still trying to work on what the makeup of the commission is going to be. But so the commission that Commissioner Shanks is working on, is that something that's going to be placed in the charter as an item? And why would we not allow the relatively new members of the council who are using one of the press persons that I talked to the other day, that have their oars in the water, let them work on what they need to be working on, and figure it out. We have an opportunity as citizens of this county to come back in and change things if we don't see what is done, if it's done right or not. We also have the authority as commissioners to say with strong language, this is what our recommendation is to you as council members. Again, reminding ourselves that 2 of the council members are relatively new, so I want to give them the opportunity to be able to wrap their arms around with this whole thing with the current makeup. And they did show an employment chart, a personnel chart that they had already placed or going to place in service. So my suggestion to this commission is to word whatever Commissioner Shanks is working on in a recommendation, because they do listen to our suggestions. Obviously, Mr. Chair, you've already talked with them. So instead of going through the process of putting something on the ballot, which could confuse the issue further in this community, we already have a council that made a decision, and now we're saying this is what we need to do to empower that department, or give that department extra authority, or a little more authority than the council has been working on. They said they've been working on it for 2 years, according to the county manager. So I think it's time.
2 of them have been there for 4 or 5 months. So that's
yeah, but if you listen to the tape, Mr. Chair, that the
Yes,
county manager said that they have tried to do this a couple of years ago, and they came up with something early last year. It didn't have a lot of teeth in it, but now they're working on it further. So I would suggest give them the chance. Let's give them our recommendation with all the research that the Climate and Environment Committee has done already, and all of that research, and present it to the council and say, look, this is what I think we think that you should be working on, and leave it out of the charter for right now. If it's not being done as we wish,
Tony,
we have an opportunity.
You've made your point, dude. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, please, you've talked a long time. Let me just speak my words, and without cutting me off. Thank you so much. And now I'm done. Thank you.
Bob, and then Dick.
Nice try, Tony. I would say basically that, 2 years they've been working on it, huh? 2 years. What a coincidence that they should come up with this within days of us filing our own. It is strictly coincidence, of course, he says sarcastically. We need to take a stand here, and we need to be the voice of the people, and we need to have this be the People's Commission, not the Council's Commission. And the People's Commission needs to be there to advise and oversee what is being done, just the way that we are drafting it, not some other weak, watered down version. So I'm all for this being an amendment.
Dick?
Yeah, my comment is this was just an update. How about, and we're short of time, how about we wait until we come back with a specific proposal?
Others?
We have to.
Well, we're not looking for action this evening. Other comments at this point in time? Okay, wonderful. Okay, next item is, are folks prepared? Unfortunately, I thought we'd be further along with our agenda items. I'm not sure we're ready to have the discussion on 1 versus 2 ballots because we're not 100% sure on where our amendments are. Are folks prepared to have that discussion, or should we punt that to next week? Okay, I'm Dick.
Well, I think we can have it because there are enough things already that are either going to be recommendations or they're going to disappear. I mean, the fundamental question is, are we willing to gamble or not?
Yes.
And I think that's there regardless of what specific issues we finished or not. That's just my view.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Liz, please.
Quick clarification, the next meeting would be day after tomorrow at 4 o'clock, not next week.
That's so I actually have several items on our future agenda that I wanted to go over.
Okay.
Yeah, but Liz, I was saying we should have one on Friday, but I got like 9 different people message me in 2 seconds freaking out. So I want to raise that and see if there's a better day, but we need time. We're going to have time. Patty, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was just about the next year kind of thing. If, say, the only one that we would have for next year was about the commission itself, which doesn't really have to be anything urgent, we wouldn't have to keep working so much. Couldn't we just say, hey, this is what we want to put on next year's ballot and everything else on this year's ballot?
Mm-hmm. The other thing that was brought, and now we're starting to dive into the topic, but the other thing that was brought up is that if we do choose to do a second ballot, that we would not be as intensely trying to push things through. For things that we want on this November's ballot, our absolute drop deadline, and it actually has to be in advance of that, but things have to be submitted to Mylene by August. I think it's 3rd. Randy has said the 1st. I think it's the 3rd, but maybe it's the 1st. So let's say August. The prosecuting attorney's office, and including in addition to giving us advice, final advice on the stuff we're submitting and so on, they need to write ballot titles. The auditor needs to find people to write the pro and con statements for the voters pamphlet. So there's work that needs to be done. It's not like we can walk in on the absolute deadline and be like, here you go. So why don't we stop the discussion on 21-22, because I think the next point on the agenda under new business may inform some of that. And so what I'd like to do is go into that. And so I believe that we need to have an additional meeting this week or next week. Tony, I see your hand. I'll get back to you in 1 second. The other thing is that I was hoping that we would be presenting our findings, be they our final findings or our first batch of findings, to the county council on July 13th. And IGRID has notified us that they are in fact meeting on the 13th. They meet every other week. So they're meeting on the 13th, and that that we could likely have time. That would mean we're ready to file. So that is 14 days from now, 15 days from now, something like that anyway. And so that's a hard push. But I think we can do it because I think we're really close. I also think with this last thing with climate and environment, that the county council did a lot of our work for us. They just didn't do it all the way. So I think this idea of the commission, and folks can argue whether or not that should be a recommendation or an amendment, but the subcommittee is working on an amendment, would come forward. We have already passed the justice and equity ones. The other ones have already been passed. So I think we're close. One of the issues is not as much for this commission, it's for our staff. Megan needs to write the entire new charter. And we have been giving her so much information on all these individual amendments and going back and forth that that's not there yet. Then we have to do our recommendations and the findings. And so I believe that we need an additional meeting. I don't want to give up my Friday. I've already got plans. But I think that we need to do it. And Catherine, tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if we could do a special meeting as soon as tomorrow. I think we needed 24 hours to advertise it. And so that makes it Friday. So some of you wrote Thursday instead of Friday. I don't think that's possible. The other thing is that, correct, 24 hours. Thank you, Catherine. So we could do it Friday, not tomorrow. The other thing is that for next week, I don't believe I can be available on Wednesday. And at least one other commissioner has told me the same. And so there was discussion if we wanted all of us to try and be present to do it on Tuesday. So I know I'm throwing out a lot of things, but for our agenda, let's, first of all, I would like to propose a, hang on a sec here. It would be Friday the 2nd, and we could do a little earlier than 4 o'clock. So maybe it doesn't go as much into the evening. But what if we did a 3 o'clock, 3 to 5 on Friday evening for a special meeting? And the sole purpose for that will be continuing the discussion on the, actually, let me ask this. Anne Marie, do you believe that you'd be ready by Friday?
We are scheduled from 2 to 4 on Friday.
Wait, are you talking about this Friday or the?
Yes,
Okay, yeah.
he's talking about this Friday. So climate and environment is going to meet at 2 on Friday.
Okay.
2 to
We
4.
can do it.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean, but okay. Okay. So then maybe we look at next week for presentation of climate and environment, because I think it's going to be really important for the full commission to have time more than a few hours to review the document. And so then if that's the case, then maybe that makes this Friday special meeting a moot point, because unless we want to talk about 21 versus 22, 2 ballot measures. Can we do that, or do we not need to? Okay, we're not, hang on, we're not, so Tony.
Just a reminder that the council chair already sent us a note that they're canceling their meeting on the 27th and they're moving the meeting to the 20th.
Yeah, we know that.
So, okay.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we went back and forth with them today on that. Thank you. Okay, so with this, with that, thank you for the reminder, Anne Marie, that your meeting on Friday. So then if that's the case, I don't think we should meet on Friday because that information won't be ready for the full commission. So sorry to take 3 minutes to talk about that. Never mind Friday. For next week, what do folks think? You want to stick with Wednesday?
How about
You can't be
Monday?
there. Tuesday. What's
Monday?
Both. Out here.
Hang on.
I thought you'd been saying Tuesday, Kevin.
I did.
Yeah.
I'm asking what folks are thinking.
Oh,
Yes,
Tuesday.
yes to Tuesday.
yes. Gives
Yeah.
them the most time. If
Yeah.
we send
I can't
something,
either.
Who can't be there Tuesday? 1, 2, 3.
Unless we did it earlier. I mean, if we did it earlier, I just have a drop cutoff by 3 o'clock on Tuesday.
earlier.
Who wants to do earlier on Tuesday?
12:30, 1 o'clock.
Can folks do earlier on Tuesday? Tom? Sorry, just before you run away, are you flexible Tuesday? You're muted, Tom.
I got to look at a kitchen calendar.
That's
Okay, go to the kitchen.
I'll
I
be
got
right back.
you. All right.
Oh, he disappeared fast.
Yeah.
That's because he's flexible.
I'm not available 1 to 3 on Tuesdays or any day, actually.
Oh. 11 to 1.
Yeah.
Liz, do you have a comment?
Did you call on me?
No, Liz had her hand up.
I was just saying yes to 11 to 1 on it.
I think it was a thumbs up she was giving you.
11 to 1.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's, we're looking at 11 to 1 on Tuesday.
Okay, I won't be there.
Really? When, is there a time you could do on Tuesday, Maureen?
No, we're off island.
Okay. Tom, how are you on Tuesday?
Oh, I have 11 o'clock appointment. Any other time that day is good.
How about
Let's
super
be-
early, like 8 a.m.?
4 to 6 a.m.
No.
Speak for
because
yourself.
I'm up already.
That's a Kyle Davies schedule.
Let's, what if we did Wednesday and we did earlier in the day?
Would you be present?
I could maybe make it work.
I would say yes, if you could be
Yeah.
there.
What if we did Wednesday from 2 to 5:30 or 2 to 4:30? I mean,
Yes.
everybody's nodding. Okay,
That'll work.
Wednesday, 2 to 4:30.
And you're gonna try and be there.
Yeah.
Way to go, Kevin.
If
I'll be off island, but I'll make sure I can do it.
Who's saying that?
It's all right. I only have my biggest client flying from Mexico all the way to here. So I'll make it work.
Wouldn't he like to see American democracy in action and join the Zoom for 2 hours?
I think he would run away.
Yeah.
No,
Right.
I just wanted to let you all know that a longtime friend of mine from South Africa, from Johannesburg, has been watching all of our work, and he's phenomenally impressed with the transparency and democracy of our commission. It's really
Thank you.
cool.
See, it wasn't such a far-fetched recommendation.
Maybe they could talk to our council.
Stop
I
it.
told him he must have insomnia if he's watching our meetings, but anyway.
Okay, so on Wednesday of next week, we will meet from 2 to 4:30 p.m. And Catherine, if you could appropriately advertise that. And at that point, and the hope is that everybody will receive, Olivia, I'll call you in one sec. The hope is that everybody will receive the climate environment newly drafted amendment to create a commission that will be kind of similar to the Justice and Equity Commission as far as its role working with this department and overseeing really important functions. So not as far as scope, obviously, but that will be sent out to everybody on hopefully Friday evening or right around there so that people will have several days to take a look at that. Olivia, you had a hand up.
Just to confirm Tuesday's time.
Tuesday, 2 to 4:30 p.m. on Wednesday. I mean, sorry, Wednesday the 7th from 2 to 4:30 p.m.
Tuesday though.
Wednesday.
Wednesday the 7th.
We're only doing Wednesday.
We're only doing Wednesday. We'll do Wednesday the 7th. With a majority of the work that has to be done is not the full commission. It's individual commissioners working on their projects, and then Megan getting the information from us and being able to draft it.
And
Dave-
I just wanted
Sorry,
you to know,
Olivia,
Kevin, if you're not available Wednesday, I am going to be en route, possibly without service. So I'm hoping I can be there.
Okay.
So
He'll be there.
Yeah, we'll make it work. And I'll correspond with you, but I will be there. The only thing is I may need to leave a little early. It just depends.
We got Maureen, if either one of you can be there.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at all the stuff I had under new business. Okay, let's take a few minutes now. We had Tuesday versus Wednesday. 2 ballots we're going to talk about next week. County Council on the 13th. So that's when we're hoping to do it. So Catherine, if you'll go ahead and finalize that with Ingrid. And I think 30 minutes should be sufficient. Okay, Tony, you want to talk about minority report?
Can I interrupt?
Dick, go ahead.
Just Kevin, I told you earlier today, I got a conflict. I have to leave.
Now,
Dick, before you do,
Yeah.
I'm too burnt out to work tonight. Can we work tomorrow?
I already sent it to you, Bob.
Oh, thank you.
You look at your email.
Thank you. I will.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want the commission to know that myself and some other commissioners are working on an oppositional paper to some of the items that are moving forward to the county council for insertion in the election in November. My involvement is one that I would like to make sure that you all know that we're doing this. That it doesn't come as a surprise, and we will have some documents available probably by the middle of July. So thank you for your all the work, and there's nothing really negative. It's more that we have different opinions on certain things, and I don't think we were completely able to make those points. So I'd like to.
Okay.
do that.
We get to know who else is on this group working on this?
If the members that are wanting to do this, that they're welcome to do that. I did not check with them to ask if they're willing to say who they are at this point. I think we should leave it the way it is for right now until you get the document, and then we'll know who that is. So thank you so much.
Well, okay.
But we didn't
Thank
talk
you.
about that part.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Gazelle. I would say it's a little awkward, but the other thing I would say is that I would hope that you would, it's interesting that you're drafting it before you've received final documents. So I would hope that you would review the final documents and comment on those, particularly environment and climate just changed dramatically in the last,
Well, obviously, we did have a couple of votes already making certain things move forward. So we were based on those kind of documents. But yes, the climate and change is a change that we have to kind of consider. Of course, I've mentioned before that my opposition to the elected position was noted at the time. But if that's off the table, there might be other things that we need to figure out that could. But just for you to know, so that
Thank you.
it's open.
I would also ask that if at all possible that your group register those comments before we conclude work so that we can see them and take them into consideration before our final vote on the entire document, instead of having it come after the fact, which it sounds like you're proposing.
It seems to us that the motion is going forward with some of the documents that have already been approved. So there's really, I mean, I don't think we're going to be changing many minds, to be honest. I just thought that we want you to know that. But yes, if that's your wish, we will definitely discuss it, and we will come prepared accordingly.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. I have Liz. I see you, David.
So, Commissioner Gazelle, I completely respect and invite opposing positions and minority reports. I'm eager to see that. And one of our earliest statements of values had to do with transparency and help building trust in our local government. So I think not stepping forward, not bringing this forward without knowing who's on that commission does the adverse of that. It adds to a sense of secrecy and behind the veil and those kinds of things. So I just really invite, you guys to chat in the chat and bring that forward. Just to keep clarity and keep as clean as we can in all of this. And the other thing is to bring that forward as soon as you can, because I want to hear it. I want to know what we've missed, what voice we haven't heard and included. So I just invite you to bring that as soon as possible and get it on the agenda.
Thank you. May I respond, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Lafferty. That is our intent. We are, we're not hiding anything. We've some of the information you've heard already from a few of us, but we wanted to make sure that the commissioners here and the council and the electorate here's another side, because some of the impressions out there that we were all on the same page, and I can assure you there are some items that we're not on the same page.
I have David, Maureen, Jane, and Bob.
Yeah, two things. I think Tony's minority report is great, and others will sign on to it. We will know, Liz, but I think its purpose is to address the public. I don't think it should be something that we sit down and deliberate. If we do, again, we're going to be in 2024. Once we vote, it should be over with. And I'm disconcerted by the fact that we voted on 1 and 2 this morning, or this afternoon. We voted on it. We congratulate ourselves. We've done it. We've passed our first amendments. And then all of a sudden I hear Kevin say, oh, well, the subcommittee is going to hear from people again at their next meeting and hear if there's other things that we should. I say, no, we voted on it. When I voted on a final amendment 1 and 2. Maybe other people disagree with me. I'd be curious, but we've got to move on. If we keep reconsidering everything and giving other opportunities and more discussion, I'm probably going to just stop attending meetings because my vote is meaningless because we keep going back and talking about it over and over again. And my understanding of minority reports is they go to the public. That's the purpose. We're done with the amendment. Tony doesn't agree with it. He presents his case to the public, and then the public does whatever they want with it. I don't think we should consider it. If we do, again, we're going to be here in 10 years when the next CRC is voted in, talking over all this stuff. It's getting really, really frustrating. Sharon, thank you for smiling. I don't know if you agree with me or not, but put me in the minutes, please, because I'm just getting really frustrated with this.
You're in the minutes, honey.
Good, good.
Maureen?
Yes. Well, I appreciate a minority report. I think it's part of the process. I think it's exactly the right thing to do. And I'm glad you're doing it. And whoever else is in it, good for you. It's part of our democracy. Let's hear it.
They've already given their minority opinion.
David, you are not recognized.
Again, I'm just getting frustrated. I'm leaving. Goodbye. I'll see you next week.
David.
Hi.
Bye.
Bye, Dave.
Jane?
No, I took my hand down, but thanks anyway.
Bob?
Yeah, I just want to say that maybe we could stop talking about Tony's minority report. He and the people who are going to make that minority report have every right to do that. And it's not really a subject of our deliberations. So let's go on to the next thing. And
Dave.
thank you, Tony, for letting us know ahead of time. That was very considerate of you.
Dave?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tony, are you considering this to be a one report or multiple reports? Is it one report that everybody's going to have consensus on that you're working with, or multiple reports that people have varying opinions on?
We're not clear on all of that right now. When we had 11 amendment recommendations, the report looked different than when we had 5 amendment recommendations. Then it's going to look different if we have those 5 amendment recommendations going to be changed again. So it's going to be different as we go. We might end up having 4 or 5 different reports depending on which amendment we're dealing with. But for right now, we don't know. We're all busy people, and I've been going to 5 or 6 meetings a week on other things, and I have to run my business. So I have a lot of busyness. So I'm not trying to sidestep the question, Dave. I respect you because you were one of the chairs of one of the committees I was on, but I think it's going to be a couple of weeks before we can figure out what the report shape is going to look like.
Right.
It's definitely going to be available.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tony. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No worries.
Okay, so Dave.
To Dave Delandorf's point about finishing up our work, I do think that not having made the decision about 1 or 2 ballots, that has to affect how we're going to be looking at these. If we're having to cut amendments or recommendations, I think continuing these discussions are important. So that's important. I'd like to also find out more information and have maybe discussion with this committee about when we need to have the recommendation non-amendments put forward. I think if we're going to be rushed to get those done within a week, we need to consider that. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, I agree with several comments that have been made that a minority report is a welcome part of this democratic process. It is also not an agenda item for the full commission. So the minority commissioners who want to write a minority report will write it. And we welcome hearing that information. And thank you very much for disclosing that you're working on that. I appreciate that very much. The last thing I was going to say, Dave, goes to your point, which is we have a lot of work before us. What I'm imagining for the agenda next week is the majority of the agenda will be the climate environment position and 1 or 2 years and our final review. And I will ask Megan to attend. Hopefully she's available at that point in time as well, so she can update us on exactly where we are. I will also work with Megan to get an update to each of you in the coming days where things are outstanding. I know from Megan already that one of the areas that has not been fully addressed is the recommendations, and she has not received recommendation language from each of you. And one of the reasons for that is that we prioritized the amendments because we have to get those. Those are even more of a deadline. So I would ask you now to not send to Megan immediately. Let's let her finish the stuff we have her working on. But make sure you're prepared, even if you've already sent them to her or you've already drafted it or whatever, go back, revisit your amendments your recommendations, sorry, and make sure that they're ready, as close as ready to go as possible, so that when we send them to Megan, it's not a daunting task for her. And we'll do that in the next couple of days. I just want to talk to Megan before I say, yes, send her a ton of recommendations. It's not a ton. I think it's 5 or 7. We also have to do the findings. So some of you have prepared findings already that were excellent, and some subcommittees or folks working on recommendations have not. If you have not worked on findings, please begin doing so and try to finalize those in the coming days, so that when Megan gets those, they're in good shape. The recommendations and the findings are not as important. They're as important. They don't have as much scrutiny and review because they're not going on the ballot. So for instance, a recommendation to the county council can be clear, but it doesn't have to go through the scrutiny of the prosecuting attorney and such. Our findings, however, do not need to go through scrutiny of the prosecuting attorney, but we do need to be prescriptive and specific in what we're saying, because that will be the legal record if there are questions with regard to what our intent was. So with our findings, we have to be very clear on what it is we are saying. So that's where several times I've quoted Mark Twain and said, I wish I had time to write a short letter with regard to the amendments. The findings is where you put that detail, describing exactly what you meant. So that's really important. So are there any questions on that? Jane, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's sort of a question, but not entirely. I mean, what concerns me, frankly, about the preparation of recommendations is not having a basic template so that they all look and feel the same. Yeah, so you're talking about a lot of recommendations, because actually we had close to 30 proposed amendments, which were whittled down to, I think it was 12 or 11. And so, subcommittees are reconvening as needed to pull those recommendations together. I don't think it's wise to be getting subcommittees to be throwing recommendations at Megan when we don't have a basic template, so they have a common look and feel, so they can be digested by the county council in a streamlined manner. So I really, we have not, our subcommittee on justice and equity has not yet started to work on our recommendations. I would prefer that we're all preparing them in a manner so they look similar. So anyway, I don't know what thoughts you have on that, but it's a request.
I have several. First of all, we already voted on which would be recommendations, and we only have like 5 or 6. So that list of 30, I do not expect, nor do I desire that to come back. And so we have a handful. I can't remember the exact number now. Maybe it was 6. I think we have 5 amendments and 6 recommendations. I think that's where we are. That's what's been voted upon. Unless the commission votes on new recommendations, that's all we have. So we will get that list out to everybody so that you have it again. And I need to start writing down these tasks.
Well, this would be helpful. Sorry, Mr. Chair, because I'm.
Give me a second.
That would be helpful.
So send recommendation list. Okay. And then as far as the template, you know what the template is? Bullet points. Just give bullet points of what the recommendation, this is not the findings, this is the recommendations. Give bullet points of what the recommendation is, and Megan can work with you to finalize that. But what she doesn't need with the recommendations is a pile of, subscript and such. And so, somebody give me an example of a recommendation. I'm brain dead right now. There are 12 recommendations, Tony says.
Term limits, reality check.
Okay. Term limits. So in term limits, there's a bullet. Actually, term limits I think is done. And
tourism.
No, tourism is a good one. So tourism, there's some bullet points that are going to say we recommend you do, that you review this, that you think about bringing it internal in the future, and so on, and that the money be used in addition to advertising the San Juan Islands, but we use some of the money for affordable housing for worker housing. Those would be bullet points. That's clear. And so the other recommendations, we can go that way. So, and I will make sure that, and Catherine helped me on this, between you and Megan, we will get the full commission, the list of the amendments we have right now and the recommendations. And I sent those to Paul the other day. And Paul, as I said to you in that email, it's a moving target right now, as you can see. But we're getting close. We're getting really close. So for instance, there's still going to be a climate environment amendment, I would imagine, hasn't been voted upon, but it's going to look very different. We just adopted 2 amendments tonight for justice and equity. And to David's point that he was frustrated with my comment about, my point is that, remember, in the end, we're going to have an entire document that I think is very important that we vote upon. And we say, this is the charter. These are the charter amendments. This is the new charter that we're putting forward to the voters in its entirety. Megan will prepare that for us, which is going to be a daunting task. And my comment was, if there are specific refinements that need to be made, it is not my hope that we start changing amendments at all, not even the justice and equity one, which obviously had some questions from even the co-chair of that committee, for God's sake. But if there are refinements that can be made, all I was saying is that those people could raise that issue with the subcommittee chair, and then that could be, something that could be discussed. It's not that we're revisiting the issue. The issue's been voted upon, but if there are small refinements, that's important. With that, we're right at 2.5 hours. We got 1 minute left. Any closing comments, Maureen?
No.
Okay. I want to thank you
Can
all.
we just hear Paul Dossett's voice, please?
You're muted, Paul.
Sorry, I do have a voice.
Oh, great.
And I will say to Tony, Paul, and Tom, who obviously I've had very differences of opinion with each of you at different times during this commission. I just really appreciate your input. And Paul, I will say publicly, I have really appreciated your guidance and your mentorship on some of this as well. And I respect the fact that we disagree on a lot of this, but we also recognize we're both here for the same reason, which is to make our county a better place. So thanks everybody for being here tonight. But Paul, I wanted to spotlight that too.
Thank you.
So, all right. With that, I would thoroughly appreciate a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. We're out. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Catherine, can you say aye?